Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're taking a really hard empirical look at one of the most deeply ingrained cultural narratives out there. We're going to break down the actual math behind this pervasive myth that renting your home is simply throwing your money away. We'll examine exactly why so many of us feel pressured to buy, what the numbers actually look like in today's wild market, and why the traditional advice might actually be backing you into a corner.
Section 1. The Home Ownership Myth. Let's look at renting versus buying.
All right, picture a scenario we all know a little too well. You're sitting at a holiday family dinner, passing the potatoes, and someone inevitably brings up your living situation. Suddenly, you're hit with that familiar sting of financial guilt. It's usually delivered by an older relative, let's just say your uncle, who bought his house back in 1994 for what you'd literally pay for a used Honda Civic today. He hits you with, "You're still renting? You're just throwing your money away, right?" He says it with such absolute certainty, it just leaves you feeling totally defeated. We've been fed this narrative for decades. Buying equals success, renting equals failure.
But, we really got to ask ourselves, is renting actually a financial prison? Or on the flip side, what if blindly buying an overpriced home in today's housing market, just because you think rent is a waste, is actually the absolute fastest way to trap yourself? We have to look at the numbers here, because if you don't understand how the math is fundamentally shifted, you might just be signing up for 30 years of collective financial insanity.
Section 2. Unrecoverable costs. Let's dive into the hidden math.
Okay, so we need to address the elephant in the room. People love to say that rent is a 100% loss, right? But they completely ignore the fact that holding a mortgage comes with its own massive set of unrecoverable costs that you are never going to see again. This is a crucial paradigm shift for your financial mindset. Think about it like this. When you rent an apartment or a house, your rent is the absolute ceiling you'll pay for housing that month. If the roof leaks, the landlord pays. But when you have a mortgage, that monthly payment is just the floor. It's literally the absolute minimum you'll pay before the real world happens.
And once you start looking at what actually makes up that floor, the illusion of perfectly building equity really starts to crack. You've got to factor in property taxes, which, spoiler alert, usually go up annually. Then there's homeowners insurance and, of course, the inevitable, totally unpredictable repairs. When you add all this up, you quickly realize that a huge chunk of your so-called ownership costs just vanishes into thin air, exactly like your rent money does.
To put that into perspective, let's look at a concrete number, $320. For an average home today, you should be setting aside at least $320 every single month just for a maintenance reserve. If you're not doing this, you are effectively one broken water heater or leaky pipe away from falling into a dangerous credit card spiral. That $320 isn't magically building wealth, it's just keeping you treading water.
Section 3. The brutal interest math and the new reality.
We really have to understand the environment we're buying in today. Let's look at the brutal truth of how interest rates have completely shifted the math on the exact same asset. Let's compare a $400,000 house across two different, very recent time frames. Just a few years ago, at a 2.65% interest rate, your monthly payment was just under $1,300. Today, at roughly 6.5%, that identical loan for that identical house costs you over $2,000 a month. And this brilliantly illustrates the silent wealth killer. That is a difference of $730. That's an extra $730 handed directly to the bank every single month. Nearly $9,000 a year in pure interest. You're building absolutely zero equity with that money. You're just paying the bank for the privilege of staying in a house that, honestly, depending on your market, might have a yard the size of a parking space.
Section 4. The human element. Let's meet Maya. So let's step away from the abstract math for a second and look at a hypothetical buyer. We'll call her Maya. Maya is a 31-year-old professional making a solid $74,000 a year, and she's saved up about $31,000. Going by every cultural signal around her, Maya is facing immense societal pressure to buy a home. But look at what happens to her finances if she actually caves to that pressure. If Maya bought the median home in her city at today's prices and rates, her housing costs would devour a really dangerous 65% of her take-home pay. She wouldn't be investing in her future. She'd be painfully house poor, with just 35% of her income left for food, transportation, healthcare, and, actual savings.
Section 5. The frozen market trap and the mobility penalty. Maya's situation highlights an entirely different kind of peril, the mobility trap in our currently frozen housing market. Right now, over half of all U.S. mortgages are sitting below 4%. What this actually means in practice is that millions of homeowners are physically held hostage by a spreadsheet. They're locked in.
They might really want to move for a better job across the country or maybe a big promotion, but they realize that giving up that magically low interest rate is mathematically punishing.
How punishing are we talking? Well, if those homeowners sell their current home to buy a new one at today's rates, they face a staggering financial penalty of over $65,000 over the life of their new reality. So they aren't staying in their homes because they absolutely love them. They're staying because the math literally prohibits them from leaving.
Section 6, the rent and invest strategy. Building wealth.
Now, the real estate and mortgage industries have a massive structural incentive to always look you in the eye and say, hey, now's a great time to buy. But you have got to run your own numbers rather than stretching your budget to 45 or 50% of your income just to stop wasting rent. So when does buying actually make sense? Look for this smart two-step rule of thumb. First, your total housing costs should stay under 30% of your gross income. And second, you need to be absolutely sure you plan to stay in that home for at least 7 years. That gives you the time to actually build equity and absorb all those hidden closing costs.
But if that math simply doesn't work for your life right now, renting is actually the responsible choice. Seriously, renting buys you the flexibility to move for better jobs without paying massive penalties. It provides the monthly breathing room to consistently invest your extra cash in index funds, which historically perform incredibly well. Ultimately, it allows you to build a $10,000 to $20,000 liquid financial foundation that gives you the absolute power to walk away from bad deals. And, best of all, eliminates that midnight financial anxiety.
Which brings us to a perspective shift I really want you to remember. Renting isn't a waste of money if it buys you the freedom to move where the opportunity is. A $3,000 mortgage in a frozen, stagnant market is definitely not a gift. But the mobility that comes with a renting lease, that might just be the exact mechanism that allows you to confidently relocate and double your income in a new city next year.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to step back from all that cultural pressure. Do not let a 30-year-old myth dictated by your uncle at Thanksgiving dictate your financial future. Ask yourself this final question. Are you forcing the math just to say you own a home? Or are you buying your freedom? Take control of your numbers, build your wealth strategically, and hey, let us know your personal strategy in the comments below.